Commander Jake Harrison stared at the screen in his office aboard the Galactic Research Station. The numbers made no sense. He read them again, hoping he had made a mistake. The atmospheric readings from the probe showed oxygen levels at 21%. That was impossible. Any world with that much oxygen should have burned up long ago. Lisa, come look at this. Jake called to his chief scientist. Dr. Lisa Murphy walked over and looked at the data. Her three eyes widened in shock. Lisa was from the water world of Aquanus, where oxygen levels never went above 5%. 21% would kill her in minutes. This has to be wrong, Lisa said. No planet can have that much oxygen and still exist. That's what I thought too, Jake replied. But the probe sent this data 3 times. Same numbers every time. Captain Ron Baker entered the room. Ron was a tall, gray-skinned Zenturi who had been flying ships for 40 years. He had seen many strange worlds, but nothing like this. The Council wants us to investigate South Free, Ron said. They're calling it a Class X Deathworld. It's the highest danger rating possible. Jake pulled up more data from the probe. The numbers got worse as he read. The gravity was 1.2 standard units. Most aliens could barely walk in gravity that strong. The surface temperature ranged from -80 to +120 degrees. The planet had massive storms that could destroy entire cities. Lightning struck the surface millions of times every day. Look at this, Lisa said, pointing to another screen. The planet has something called tectonic plates. They move around and crash into each other. This causes earthquakes and volcanoes. All the time. How can anything live there? Ron asked. Jake switched to the biological scan data. What he saw made his blood run cold. The planet was covered with life. Billions and billions of creatures lived on this nightmare world. Plants grew everywhere, even in the harshest places. Animals moved across land, swam in the oceans, and flew through the toxic atmosphere. This is impossible, Jake whispered.
Ow.
Nothing should be able to live in those conditions. The probe had detected one species that seemed to be in charge of the planet. They called themselves humans. Humans had built cities all over the world, even in the most dangerous places. They lived in deserts where the heat would cook most aliens alive. They lived in frozen areas where the cold would freeze blood solid. Even lived on small islands surrounded by violent oceans. Lisa studied the human biological data. Their bodies are strange, she said. They have dense bones that could be used as weapons. Their skin can heal from cuts and burns. They have something called an immune system that fights off diseases. What kind of diseases? Jake asked. Wait, ones, Lisa replied. Diseases that would kill entire populations on other worlds. But humans just get sick for a few days and then get better. Ron looked at the communication data the probe had gathered. Human radio and television signals painted a picture of casual violence. The humans talked about their weather like it was normal. They called deadly storms bad weather and then went outside anyway. Listen to this, Ron said, playing a human weather report. The voice says there will be thunderstorms with deadly lightning, hail that can break windows, and winds strong enough to knock down trees. Then it says to have a nice day. Jake shook his head. They talk about it like it's nothing. The team continued reading the probe data. Humans had something called sports, where they crashed into each other at high speeds. They had activities called extreme sports, where they jumped off cliffs and mountains for fun. They went swimming in oceans filled with creatures that could eat them alive. Look at this, Lisa said, showing them pictures of human cities. Oh. They built these right on top of fault lines where earthquakes happen all the time. And here, they built cities next to volcanoes that could explode at any moment. Would they do that? Ron asked. Because they don't seem to understand how dangerous their world is, Jake replied. The probe had also detected human history records. The data showed that the planet had been hit by massive disasters many times. Giant rocks from space had crashed into it. Supervolcanoes had exploded and covered the world in ash. Ice ages had frozen most of the planet. Each time, most life had died, but each time life had come back stronger. The humans have survived through all of this, Jake said. Not just survived, but thrived. They're spreading across their planet, like they own it. Lisa pulled up more biological data. Their bodies are designed for this world. They can run for long distances without getting tired. They can lift heavy objects. They can see in low light. They can survive without food for weeks and without water for days. Most aliens would die within hours on that planet, Ron said. Team looked at the final piece of data. Humans had started building machines that could fly in space. They were getting ready to leave their death world and explore the galaxy. The Council needs to know about this, Jake said. We're dealing with a species that thinks a Class X death world is home. Ron started the engines of their research ship. The Frontier, course set for the Sol system, he announced, as they traveled toward the human homeworld. Jake couldn't stop thinking about what they might find. Every other species in the galaxy lived on safe, comfortable worlds. They had technology to protect them from danger. They avoided risk whenever possible. But humans were different. They had evolved on a world that was trying to kill them every day. They had learned to fight back against their planet and win. They had turned the most dangerous world in the galaxy into their home. What do you think they'll be like? Lisa asked. I don't know, Jake replied. But if they can survive on that world, they might be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The ship's computer beeped with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. Jake read it and felt his heart sink. The message was simple, but terrifying. Recent probe data from Sol 3 shows the dominant species has developed nuclear weapons. They have used these weapons against each other in warfare. They have enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet several times over, yet they continue to live normally, to approach with extreme caution. Ron looked at the message. Have planet-killing weapons, and they're not afraid to use them? Apparently not, Jake said. They used them in wars and then just kept living their lives. Lisa studied the weapon data. These nuclear weapons would turn most worlds into dead rocks. But the humans used them and then rebuilt their cities right where the weapons hit. What kind of species does that? Ron asked. Jake didn't have an answer. As they got closer to the Sol system, he realized they were about to meet the most dangerous species in the galaxy. A species that had turned a death world into paradise and thought weapons of mass destruction were just another tool. The humans were coming to space. The galaxy was not ready for them. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was called to order in the Great Hall on Central Station. Representatives from 47 different worlds sat in their protective atmosphere bubbles, all talking at once about the Sol 3 problem. Ambassador Helen Price from the peaceful world of Harmonia stood up first. Helen was small and blue-skinned, with large eyes that showed fear. Her people had never known violence or danger. They lived on a world where the worst weather was a light rain. We must be very careful, Helen said in her soft voice. Any species that can live on such a dangerous world must be violent by nature. They probably solve all their problems with fighting and war. General Pete Collins from the military world of Sparta nodded in agreement. Pete was tall and covered in thick armor-like skin. His people were warriors, but even they lived on a safe world with normal gravity and breathable air. I agree with Ambassador Price, Pete said. These humans are clearly a warrior race. They have nuclear weapons, and they are not afraid to use them. We should put their entire system under quarantine. Keep them trapped on their death world before they can spread across the galaxy. Dr. Alan Foster raised one of his forearms to speak. Alan was from the scholarly world of Mentalis, where his people spent their lives studying and learning. Had been reading human communications for weeks. I think we are making a mistake, Alan said. Yes, humans can fight and make war, but they also work together when they face danger. When their planet has earthquakes or storms, they help each other. They share food and medicine. They risk their lives to save strangers. That proves nothing, Helen replied. Of course they work together. They need to survive on that terrible world. But what will they do when they meet us? Will they see us as friends or enemies? The debate went on for hours. Some council members wanted to destroy the human homeworld before they could develop space travel. Others wanted to study them. From a distance, few brave voices suggested trying to make contact. Finally, the council president called for order. She was an ancient being from the crystal world of Lumina, old and wise, but very fragile. One fall could shatter her crystal body into pieces. "We have made our decision," the president said. "We will attempt first contact, but with extreme caution. The contact team will wear full protection suits rated for Class X environments. It will meet the humans in a remote location away from their cities." The job of leading the first contact mission went to diplomat Karen Wells. Karen was from New Earth, colony world with perfect weather and no dangerous animals. She had handled many first contact missions, but never with a species from a Deathworld. Karen studied the human data for days, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The more she learned, the more worried she became. Humans seemed to enjoy danger. They had something called extreme sports, where they jumped out of flying machines. For fun, they climbed tall mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. They went swimming with creatures that could bite them in half. "How do we talk to beings like this?" Aaron asked her. Team Dr. Steve Martinez was the team's xenobiologist. He had studied hundreds of alien species, but never anything like humans. Steve was short and round, from a world where the biggest danger was running out of cake at dinner. "The problem is their environment," Steve said. "We need to meet them somewhere safe, but everywhere on their planet is dangerous. Their cities have poison in the air from their machines. Their countryside has wild animals that eat meat. Even their homes are dangerous." The team looked at maps of Earth, searching for the safest place to land. Everything looked terrible. Oceans had violent storms and creatures with sharp teeth. The forests had predators hiding behind every tree. The mountains were cold and had thin air. The deserts were hot enough to cook food. "What about here?" asked pilot Nancy Clark, pointing to a large sandy area. "The probe data says this is called the Sahara Desert." "That might work," Steve said, reading the environmental data. "The temperature is only 120 degrees. That's hot, but our suits can handle it. There are no large predators in this area. The ground is flat, so we can land safely." Karen nodded. "The Sahara Desert it is. At least there are no humans living there full-time." The team prepared for the most dangerous first contact mission in galactic history. Their environmental suits were the best available, designed to protect them from the worst conditions in space. The suits could survive in acid rain, crushing gravity, and freezing cold. But they had never been tested on a Class X Deathworld. The ship Frontier approached Earth slowly and carefully. Captain Ron Baker kept all weapons powered down to show they came in peace. The last thing they wanted was to start a war with these dangerous humans. "I'm picking up radio signals," Communication Officer Lisa Murphy reported. "The humans know we're here. They're trying to talk to us." "What are they saying?" Karen asked. "They're speaking in different languages, but the computer is translating. They seem excited. Some are saying, 'Welcome to Earth.' Others are asking if we need help." "Help?" Karen was confused. "We're the ones with the advanced technology. What help could they offer us?" "I don't know," Lisa replied. "But they keep offering food and water and something called hospitality." The ship landed in the middle of the Sahara Desert. The team put on their environmental suits and checked all the seals twice. One small leak could kill them in minutes. On this hellish world, remember Karen said to her team, "These humans are dangerous. They may look friendly, but they survived on a death world. Stay alert and be ready to run back to the ship if needed." The team stepped out onto the surface. Of Earth, the heat hit them immediately, even through their protective suits. The sand under their feet was so hot it could melt metal. The sun overhead was a blazing ball of fire that would blind them without their protective visors. "How does anything live here?" Steve whispered. They did not have to wait long for an answer. A human vehicle appeared in the distance, moving fast across the sand. It stopped near their ship, and a human got out. The human was not wearing any protective suit. He was dressed in light clothing and a hat. He walked toward them across the burning sand like it was a pleasant spring day. "Hello," the human said with a big smile. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Dr. Steve Adams from the university. We've been waiting for you." Karen stared at the human in shock. He was standing on sand hot enough to cook food under a sun that would burn. Most aliens to death, in air with enough oxygen to cause explosions. And he looked comfortable. "You're not wearing protection?" Karen said through her suit speaker. "How are you still alive?" Steve Adams laughed. "Protection from what? It's a beautiful day. Temperature is about 115 degrees. Pretty nice for the desert. I brought you some water in case you're thirsty. The human held up a container filled with liquid, pure water, one of the most precious substances in the galaxy. And he was offering it like it cost nothing. We chose this location because it's comfortable, Steve continued. Not too hot, not too cold. Perfect weather for a chat. Would you like to come to our base camp? We set up some shade and have cold drinks waiting. Karen looked at her team. The humans thought this burning desert was comfortable weather. They had water to waste on strangers. They were offering hospitality on a world that should have killed them all. What have we gotten ourselves into? She whispered to Steve Martinez. I don't know, he replied, but I think we're about to find out. Dr. Nancy Green adjusted her protective suit one more time before entering the human research facility. She was the lead xenobiologist for the contact team. Her job was to study how humans could possibly survive on their death world. What? She had learned so far made no sense at all. The human base camp was a simple collection of tents and temporary buildings in the middle of the desert. Humans walked around outside without any protection, laughing and talking like they were at a pleasant vacation spot. Some were even doing exercises in the burning heat. Dr. Adams' Nancy called through her suit speaker. Can we begin the biological studies? Steve Adams smiled and nodded. He was still wearing only light clothes and a hat. Of course, we've got volunteers ready for testing. They're excited to help. Nancy set up her scanning equipment while her assistant Dr. Tony Rivera prepared the psychological evaluation tools. Tony was a mind specialist from the peaceful world of Serenity, where the biggest stress was choosing what to eat for lunch. The first human volunteer was a woman named Carol West. She was middle-aged with brown hair and looked completely normal. But when Nancy scanned her body, the results were impossible. Your bones, Nancy said in shock. They're so dense they could be used as weapons. Most beings would not be able to move with bones this heavy. Carol laughed. Really? They feel normal to me? I play tennis twice a week and go hiking on weekends. Never had any problems. Nancy looked at the bone density readings again. Carol's skeleton was strong enough to survive impacts that would shatter most alien bones. Her muscles were designed to work in heavy gravity. Her heart was powerful enough to pump blood through a body built like a tank. What is tennis? Nancy asked. It's a game, Carol explained. You hit a ball back and forth with rackets. You run around a lot and try to make the other player miss the ball. And hiking? Walking up mountains and through forests? It's fun and good exercise. Nancy made notes on her data pad. Humans considered activities that would kill most aliens to be fun recreation. She moved on to test Carol's immune system. The results were even more shocking. Carol's blood contained antibodies for diseases that Nancy had never seen before. Her white blood cells were like tiny warriors ready to fight off any infection. Her body could heal cuts and bruises in days instead of months. Have you ever been seriously sick? Nancy asked. Oh, sure, Carol replied. I had the flu last winter. Felt awful for about a week. And I broke my arm falling off my bike when I was 12. You broke a bone and survived. Of course. The doctor put it in a cast and it healed up fine. Good as new. See? Carol moved her arm normally. Nancy stared at the medical data. Humans could break their incredibly strong bones and then heal them back to full strength. They could fight off diseases that would wipe out entire alien populations. They recovered from injuries that would be permanently crippling to other species. Meanwhile, Tony was running psychological tests on other human volunteers. A man named Bill Turner sat calmly answering questions while Tony's stress monitors went. Crazy, the equipment must be broken, Tony muttered. Says you're under extreme psychological pressure, but you look relaxed. Bill shrugged. Well, I do have a big presentation at work tomorrow and my daughter's getting married next month, and the car needs repairs. But nothing unusual. Tony checked his equipment again. Stress levels Bill was showing would cause most aliens to have complete mental breakdowns. But Bill was talking about these problems like they were minor inconveniences. How do you handle all that pressure? Tony asked. You just deal with it, Bill said. Life happens. You do your best and keep moving forward. Tony made more notes. Humans routinely handled stress levels that would hospitalize other species. They seemed to think constant pressure and problems were normal parts of life. Nancy moved on to study human children. A group of kids were playing nearby, and what she saw made her blood freeze. The children were running, jumping, and crashing into each other at high speeds. They were laughing and having fun while doing things that would seriously injure young aliens. Is this normal behavior? Nancy asked their teacher, a woman named Linda Ross. Oh yes, Linda said. Kids love to play rough. Helps them burn off energy and learn coordination. Nancy watched as two boys collided while chasing a ball. They bounced off each other, laughed, and kept playing. The impact would have broken alien bones, but the human children barely noticed it. Don't they get hurt? Nancy asked. Sometimes they get scraped knees or bumps, Linda said. But kids are tough. They heal fast. A little girl ran up to them, breathing hard from playing. Nancy's scanner showed the child's heart rate and oxygen consumption were at levels that would indicate medical emergency in most species. But the girl was smiling and asking for a drink of water. Are you feeling sick? Nancy asked the child. No, I feel great, the girl said. Can we play some more? Nancy realized that human children could push their bodies to limits that would kill alien adults. They called it playing. Dr. Tony Rivera was studying human entertainment and becoming more disturbed by the hour. He watched videos of something called football, where large humans crashed into each other at full speed, trying to carry a ball across a field. This is considered entertainment, Tony asked Steve Adams. One of our most popular sports, Steve replied. Millions of people watch it every week. Tony watched as players collided with impacts that would require alien medical teams. Humans got up, brushed themselves off, and did it again. They seemed to enjoy the violence. What about this? Tony showed Steve a video of humans jumping out of aircraft with only fabric parachutes. Skydiving, Steve said. It's fun. Great way to see the countryside. And this. Tony showed humans climbing vertical rock faces with their bare hands. Rock climbing. Good exercise and a nice challenge. Tony realized that humans voluntarily engaged in activities designed to simulate life-threatening danger. They paid money to put themselves in situations that would terrify other species. They called it recreation. Nancy studied human medical records and found more impossibilities. Humans regularly consumed substances that were toxic to most life forms. They drank alcohol, which was literally poison, for pleasure. They ate plants that contained chemicals designed to cause pain, calling them spicy food and enjoying the sensation. You intentionally eat things that hurt you, Nancy asked Dr. Adams. Spicy food doesn't really hurt, Steve explained. It just adds flavor, makes the meal more interesting. Nancy looked at the chemical analysis of human spicy food. The compounds would cause severe pain and tissue damage in most aliens. But humans had adapted to enjoy the sensation. She discovered that humans also deliberately exposed themselves to their star's radiation, lying in the sun to change their skin color. They called it getting a tan and considered it attractive. The radiation levels would cause cancer in most species. But humans had developed natural defenses against their own star. The research team spent days documenting human impossibilities. Humans could survive temperatures that would kill most aliens. They could drink water that was pure enough to be used in alien laboratories. They breathed air with oxygen concentrations that should have caused explosions. They lived with background radiation that would be dangerous on other worlds. But the most shocking discovery came when Nancy studied human relationships with other Earth species. Humans kept animals as companions, animals that could easily kill. She watched as Carol West played with a large dog, a descendant of pack hunters. The animal had teeth designed for tearing meat and jaws strong enough to crush bones. But it licked Carol's face and wagged its tail, completely friendly. Isn't that creature dangerous? Nancy asked. Max, he's a sweetheart, Carol said, scratching the dog's ears. He's been my companion for 8 years. Nancy realized that humans had formed partnerships with predators. They lived with animals that could kill them, and both species benefited from the relationship. It was a level of interspecies cooperation that the galaxy had never seen before. As the research continued, one thing became clear. Humans were not just survivors of a death world. They were a species that had turned survival into an art form. They had adapted to their dangerous planet so completely that they could not imagine life any other way. And now they were preparing to bring that adaptation to the stars. Dr. Amy Roberts sat in her protective suit, staring at the human history files on her computer screen. Amy was a historian from the peaceful world of archives, where the most violent event in recorded history was a debate that got slightly heated. What she was reading about human history made her question everything she thought she knew about civilization. "Dr. Adams," Amy called through her suit speaker, "can you explain this event called the Black Death?" Steve Adams looked up from his coffee. He was drinking a hot liquid that would burn most alien throats, and he seemed to enjoy it. "The plague?" "Yeah, that was rough. Killed about a third of Europe's population in the 1300s. Amy's hands shook as she read the numbers. 75 million people died from disease, and your civilization survived? "Well, sure," Steve said. "It was terrible, but people adapted. They learned better sanitation, improved medicine, rebuilt. Their cities' life went on." Amy stared at him. On her world, a disease that killed even 1,000 people would end civilization. The survivors would spend generations recovering. But humans had lost 75 million people and treated it as a learning experience? "What about these world wars?" Amy asked, reading more files. "It says here that humans fought to global conflicts in the same century." "Yeah, World War I and World War II, Steve confirmed. "Ugly times, but we learned from them. Built better international cooperation afterward." Amy read the casualty numbers and felt sick. Over 100 million humans had died in those wars. The weapons they used could destroy entire cities. They had fighting in the air, on land, and in the oceans. They had turned their entire planet into a battlefield. "Ow. Did your species survive?" Amy whispered. "We're tough," Steve said simply. "When bad things happen, we pick ourselves up and keep going. It's what humans do." Colonel Bill Hayes, the team's military analyst, was studying human warfare tactics in another tent. Bill was from the warrior world of Sparta, where his people prided themselves on being fighters. But what he was reading about human combat made him feel like a child playing with toys. "These humans have weaponized everything," Bill muttered to himself. "Earth itself, their weather, their diseases, even their atoms." He read about how humans had used their planet's geography as a weapon. They had flooded valleys to stop enemies. They had burned forests to deny shelter. They had poisoned water supplies and destroyed food crops. They had turned their own death world into an even deadlier weapon. But the worst part was how creative they were. Humans had invented chemical weapons that could kill by touch. They had created biological weapons using diseases from their own world. They had built nuclear weapons that could split atoms and destroy entire cities in seconds. "Dr. Adams," Bill called out, "your species has nuclear weapons? Thousands of them. Why haven't you destroyed yourselves?" Steve looked thoughtful. "Well, we came close a few times, but we figured out that using them would be bad for everyone, so we made agreements to control them." "You make agreements about weapons that can end civilizations." "It seemed like the smart thing to do," Steve said. "We want to survive, not destroy everything." Bill shook his head. Most warrior species would have used such weapons immediately. The fact that humans had the self-control to make rules about planet-killing weapons was almost scarier than the weapons themselves. Dr. Greg Thompson, studying human literature and entertainment in his own research area. Greg was from the artistic world of melody, where the most exciting story was about a flower that bloomed in an unusual color. Human fiction was giving him nightmares. "They write stories about surviving disasters worse than reality," Greg said to his assistant. "Look at this book about people surviving after nuclear war. They call it entertainment." Greg read story after story about humans facing impossible odds and winning. They wrote about surviving in space, fighting alien invasions, and exploring dangerous new worlds. What terrified him was that humans considered these stories to be escapist fantasy. When they describe situations that would be real nightmares for other species, and their movies, Greg continued, they make visual stories about disasters, wars, and monsters. People pay money to be scared on purpose. He watched a human film about a giant shark attacking swimmers. The shark was a predator from Earth's oceans, but the humans in the movie fought back and won. Other species would have simply stayed out of the water forever. They make entertainment about their own planet trying to kill them, Greg realized, and they always show humans winning. Amy Roberts continued reading human history and found more impossible events. She learned about the Great Depression, when humans lost their jobs and money, but rebuilt their economy. She read about natural disasters that had destroyed entire cities, only to see humans build new cities in the same dangerous places. Dr. Adams, Amy said, I'm reading about something called the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. It says the city was completely destroyed by earthquake and fire. Yep, Steve nodded. Big disaster. But they rebuilt the city even better than before. They rebuilt it in the same place, where earthquakes happen regularly. Well, yeah, it's a nice location, good harbor, pleasant climate. Why would they abandon it just because of a few earthquakes? Amy stared at the records. Humans had rebuilt their city on top of the fault line that had destroyed it. They had made it stronger and more beautiful. They had taken a natural disaster and turned it into an opportunity for improvement. She found similar stories all through human history. Volcanoes had destroyed cities, and humans had rebuilt them next to the same volcanoes. Floods had wiped out towns, and humans had built new towns in the same river valleys. Hurricanes had flattened coastal areas, and humans had built bigger and better cities on the same coasts. Your species treats disasters as temporary inconveniences, Amy said in amazement. Pretty much, Steve agreed. Bad things happen, but life goes on. You adapt and overcome. Colonel Bill Hayes made a disturbing discovery about human exploration. He found records of humans deliberately going to the most dangerous places on their planet. It's not to survive, but to see what was there. They climbed mountains that could kill them, Bill said to himself. They went to both poles of their planet where everything is frozen. They went to the bottom of their oceans where the pressure would crush most ships. He read about human explorers who had died trying to reach the North Pole. Instead of learning to avoid such places, other humans had continued the attempts until they succeeded. They had treated deadly exploration as a challenge to overcome. They did all this before. They had space travel, Bill realized. They explored every dangerous place on their Deathworld just because it was there. Dr. Greg Thompson found the most disturbing thing of all. Humans had something called extreme sports, where they deliberately put themselves in life-threatening situations for fun. They jumped out of aircraft, climbed vertical cliffs, and surfed on giant waves that could crush them. They pay money to almost die, Greg said in horror. They consider near-death experiences to be entertainment. He watched videos of humans throwing themselves off bridges with only elastic ropes to stop their fall. They called it bungee jumping and laughed while they did it. They strapped boards to their feet and slid down mountains covered in frozen water, dodging trees and rocks at high speed. Look at this. Greg showed Amy a video of humans riding bicycles off cliffs and doing flips in the air before landing. They call it extreme mountain biking. Amy watched the video and felt faint. They're flying through the air on primitive vehicles and they're smiling. The worst part, Greg continued, is that they keep making these activities more dangerous. They're not satisfied with just surviving. They want bigger challenges. As the research team compiled their findings, a terrifying picture emerged. Humans were not just survivors of a Deathworld. They were a species that had turned survival into a game. They'd faced every disaster, disease, and danger their planet could throw at them. They had come back stronger each time. They had survived ice ages by learning to make fire and build shelters. They had survived plagues by developing medicine. They had survived wars by creating better technology. They had survived natural disasters by building stronger cities. And now they were bored with just surviving. They were looking for new challenges, new dangers to overcome. They were preparing to leave their Deathworld and explore the galaxy, bringing their impossible resilience with them. What have we done? Amy whispered as she finished her report. We've made contact with a species that considers the impossible to be routine. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when a Deathworld species decided to go visiting. President Laura Mitchell walked into the Galactic Council meeting chamber wearing only a simple business suit, no environmental protection, no breathing apparatus, no gravity assistance devices. The alien representatives stared at her in shock. As she moved through conditions that should have killed any living being, the chamber was designed for galactic standard atmosphere, which contained barely enough oxygen to keep most species conscious. The gravity was set to 0.8 standard units, which was considered heavy for diplomatic meetings. The temperature was a cool 68 degrees, which most aliens found uncomfortably cold. Laura looked around the room and smiled. "Good morning. Everyone, thank you for inviting Earth to join the Galactic Council. We're excited to be here." Ambassador Helen Price from Harmonia trembled in her protective bubble. "President Mitchell, how are you surviving in these conditions without life support?" "These conditions?" Laura looked confused. "This feels pretty comfortable to me. Nice temperature, good air circulation, perfect for a meeting." The council president, the ancient crystal being from Lumina, spoke carefully. "We understand that Earth wishes to participate in galactic colonization efforts, but surely you realize that most worlds available for settlement are considered uninhabitable." "Really?" Laura sat down in a chair that creaked under Earth's heavy gravity. "What makes them uninhabitable?" General Pete Collins from Sparta pulled up a holographic display of available worlds. "This planet has surface temperatures reaching 100 degrees. The gravity is 1.1 standard units. There are frequent sandstorms and no natural water sources. Sounds like Arizona in summer," Laura said cheerfully. "We have cities there with millions of people. They love it." The aliens exchanged worried glances. Pete continued, "This world has an atmosphere with 18% oxygen. The pressure is 20% above standard. It rains acid twice a week. 18% oxygen is a little low for us, but we can adapt," Laura replied. "We live in places with acid rain on Earth. You just need good drainage and protective coatings on buildings." Dr. Alan Foster from Mentalist spoke up nervously. "President Mitchell, these worlds were abandoned because they're death traps. No civilized species would attempt to live there." "Oh, I see the problem," Laura said with understanding. "You're thinking like people who live on safe, comfortable worlds. We're used to challenges. These planets sound like interesting projects." Ming-Chi stood up and walked to the holographic display. The aliens watched in terror as she moved through their carefully controlled environment without any protection. "This one looks nice." Laura pointed to a world with crushing gravity and constant volcanic activity. "Good geothermal energy potential. Volcanic soil would be great for farming once we set up the right crops." "Volcanic soil?" Ambassador Helen gasped. "That planet's surface is covered in molten rock. It's not everywhere," Laura said reasonably. "And volcanic soil is incredibly fertile once it cools down. Some of our best farmland on Earth is on old volcanic sites." Admiral Tim Jackson had been waiting in Earth's first diplomatic ship just outside the station. When he received Laura's signal, he docked and joined the meeting. Tim walked in wearing his military dress uniform, looking completely comfortable in the alien environment. "Sorry I'm late," Tim said to Laura. "Had to finish the colonization survey reports." "Colonization surveys?" the council president asked weakly. "We've been looking at potential settlement sites," Tim explained, pulling out a data pad. "Found some really interesting prospects. There's this one world with gravity twice Earth normal, great for building strong bones and muscles. And another one with an atmosphere that's mostly nitrogen and carbon dioxide, perfect for growing certain Earth plants." The alien stared at him. He was describing worlds that would crush and poison most galactic citizens, and he was excited about them. "Admiral Jackson," General Pete said carefully, "those worlds are classified as Class X death worlds. No one has ever successfully colonized a Class X world." "Really?" Tim looked surprised. "They seem pretty manageable to us. I mean, they're not as nice as Earth, but they're not that bad." Laura nodded in agreement. "We were actually hoping to help with the galaxy's uninhabitable world problem. We noticed you have a lot of planets that no one can use. Seems wasteful." Dr. Steve Martinez, who had returned from Earth with the contact team, spoke from his own protective suit. "President Mitchell, these worlds aren't just difficult. They're designed to kill living things. So was Earth. Laura said simply. But we made it work. These other worlds just need the right approach. She turned back to the holographic display. Look at this one. Constant storms, high radiation, toxic atmosphere. Back home, we'd call that a fixer-upper. A fixer-upper, Ambassador Helen whispered. A project, Laura explained. Something that needs work, but has good potential. We could set up atmospheric processors, build storm shelters, develop radiation-resistant crops. Give us a few decades, and we'd have a nice little colony going. Admiral Tim pulled up his own data files. We've already identified 12 worlds that would be perfect for human settlement. This one has an ocean of liquid methane. It's great for chemical processing. This one has diamond rain. Fantastic mining opportunities. The aliens were horrified. The humans were looking at Deathworlds and seeing business opportunities. President Mitchell, the council president, said slowly, "What about worlds that are too dangerous even for humans?" Laura thought for a moment. "I'm not sure such places exist. I mean, we've lived through ice ages, asteroid impacts, and supervolcano eruptions. We've built cities in deserts, on fault lines, and next to active volcanoes. What could be worse than that?" Dr. Alan Foster brought up the most dangerous world on record. This planet orbits a dying star. The radiation levels would kill any known life form in hours. The surface temperature is 300 degrees. The atmosphere is pure poison. Laura studied the data with interest. "That's pretty extreme," she admitted. "We'd need some serious engineering to make that work. But it's not impossible. Good solar energy potential with that dying star. And if the atmosphere is that toxic, it probably has valuable chemical compounds. We could harvest." Tim nodded enthusiastically. "We could set up orbital habitats first, then work our way down to the surface as we develop better protective technology. This might take a century or two, but it could be done." The council chamber fell. Silent. Even the most dangerous world in their database looked like a challenging but doable project to the humans. General Pete finally spoke. "What kind of worlds do humans consider uninhabitable?" Laura and Tim exchanged glances. "Well," Laura said thoughtfully, "there's not much we couldn't eventually adapt to. I suppose if a planet was completely molten or had no solid surface at all, that might be tricky." "Tricky," Tim agreed, "but not impossible. We could build floating cities or underwater habitats. Where there's a will, there's a way." The aliens realized they were facing a complete shift in how the galaxy thought about habitable worlds. For thousands of years, they had written off planets as too dangerous for settlement. Now, humans were offering to turn those death worlds into vacation resorts. President Mitchell, the council president, said carefully, "What do humans want in exchange for these colonization efforts?" "Nothing much," Laura replied. "Just the usual trade agreements, cultural exchange, maybe some help with our own expansion into deep space. We're planning missions to some of the more interesting regions of the galaxy." "Interesting regions?" Dr. Allen asked with dread. Admiral Tim pulled up a star chart. "Well, there's this area near the galactic core with intense radiation and gravitational anomalies. And this region with unstable space-time that most ships avoid. And this nebula that's supposed to be haunted by the ghosts of dead civilizations. You want to explore the most dangerous places in the galaxy," Ambassador Helen said, faintly. "They sound fascinating," Laura said with genuine excitement. "Think of what we might discover. New physics, exotic materials, maybe even contact with other forms of life." As the meeting continued, the aliens began to understand what humanity's entry into galactic civilization would mean. Humans would not just join the galaxy. They would transform it. Worlds that had been written off as uninhabitable would become human colonies. Dangerous regions of space that were avoided by all sane species would become human exploration targets. The galaxy's understanding of what was possible would be completely rewritten. Dr. Kevin Moore, Earth's newly appointed ambassador to the Galactic Council, arrived for the closing ceremony. He walked through the alien environment as casually as if he were taking a stroll in the park. "I'm excited to get started," Kevin said to the assembled representatives. "We've already got volunteers lined up for the first colonization missions. Young families looking for adventure, retired folks who want a project to work on, scientists eager to study new environments. Volunteers? General Pete asked weakly. Oh yes, Kevin said cheerfully. We had to turn people away. Everyone wants to be part of expanding human civilization to the stars. Some of them are even talking about starting tourism industries on the colony worlds. Tourism Ambassador Helen repeated numbly. 2 death worlds. Well, not everyone gets to experience extreme environments, Kevin explained. Some people find our Earth vacation spots to tame.